In this video, I'm going to name the worst NFL first-round picks in every draft slot since 1970. Put in simpler terms, I'll be going over the worst first overall pick, second overall pick, third overall pick, and so on, all the way up to the worst 32nd overall pick. Some of these names you might remember, but most have been lost to history due to their immense level of incompetence. Embrace the suck. The worst first overall pick, JAMARCUS Russell, Oakland, 2007. We all know the story of JAMARCUS by now. He was a super thick quarterback at LSU with ungodly arm strength. What Oakland found out the hard way, though, after paying him a shitload of money before he ever took an NFL snap, was that he had zero work ethic. Oh, and that he also couldn't play at the NFL level. He finished his 3-year career with 18 touchdowns, 23 interceptions, and a 7-18 record. He was so bad that no team even took a flyer on him after Oakland cut him. The worst second overall pick, Ryan Leaf, San Diego, 1998. Did you know that the top 2 picks in the 1998 NFL draft, Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf, combined for 553 career touchdown passes? Amazing! Unfortunately for San Diego, Leaf only accounted for 14 of those 553. Leaf finished his embarrassing career with 14 touchdowns, 36 interceptions, and a 4-14 record. He was also known as a jackass and hated by teammates. Not only was he awful by first-round quarterback standards, he may legitimately be the worst quarterback to ever play in the NFL, regardless of draft status. The worst third overall pick, AKILI Smith, Cincinnati, 1999. It's tough trying to find a quarterback who was worse than Ryan Leaf and JAMARCUS Russell, but AKILI Smith just might pull it off. Drafted third overall in 1999 despite a terrible Wonderlic score and just one great year at Oregon, Smith started 17 games over 4 years with Cincy, finishing with 5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a 3-14 record. To sum up Smith's terribleness succinctly, among the 163 quarterbacks since 1999 to have at least 460 pass attempts, Smith ranks 163rd, aka dead last, in passer rating at 52.8. Gross. The worst fourth overall pick, Art Schlichter, Baltimore, 1982. Schlichter was not only a terrible quarterback, he finished his career with just 3 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and an 0-6 record. He's also a terrible person. He has, by his own account, committed over 20 felonies related to his debilitating gambling habits, and has been in and out of prison for most of his adult life, mostly for defrauding people out of their money. Sounds a lot like Tom Brady's friend Alex Guerrero, huh? Even if he had turned out to be a great quarterback, his demons off the field most likely would have ruined his career. It's hard to say a person is irredeemable, but Schlichter is truly irredeemable. The worst 5th overall pick, Mike Junkin, Cleveland, 1987. Fresh off of a heartbreaking loss in the AFC Championship game to John Elway, the Browns decided to trade up and draft Duke linebacker Mike Junkin with the 5th overall pick. It turned out to be disastrous. Junkin was projected as a 2nd-round pick, but then Cleveland coach Marty Schottenheimer didn't give a shit. Junkin dealt with injuries and lasted just 2 seasons in Cleveland and appeared in 20 games in his career overall, finishing with just 57 tackles. Oh yeah, and Cleveland traded away a Pro Bowl linebacker and Chip Banks to draft him. The worst 6th overall pick, Rich Campbell, Green Bay, 1981. Not every Cal Berkeley quarterback the Green Bay Packers decide to draft in the 1st round ends up working out. Take the case of Rich Campbell, for example. After a senior season in which he threw 6 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, Green Bay was enamored enough to take Campbell 6th overall. The lack of results from Campbell are so jarring, I'm stunned they aren't talked about more often when discussing quarterback busts. Campbell never started a single NFL game and appeared in just 7. He threw just 68 passes and finished with 3 touchdowns and 9 interceptions for a 38.8 passer rating. Tough scene. The worst 7th overall pick, Reggie Rogers, Detroit, 1987. Reggie was a troubled soul and a problem child who finished his NFL career with just 2 sacks. He played just 6 games as a rookie due to emotional problems and spending time in a counseling center. That's not too bad, but what happened his 2nd year doomed him forever. In October 1988, he killed 3 teenagers while drunk driving. He eventually spent 13 months in prison for vehicular manslaughter. He was arrested for DUI at least 5 times during his life, which ended in 2013 from cocaine and alcohol intoxication. The worst 8th overall pick, Larry Stegent, St. Louis, 1970. Larry appeared in just 7 NFL games and recorded one catch for 12 yards. That's the extent of the 8th overall pick in 1970's career production. In Stegent's defense, he suffered a knee injury in his first preseason game, but obviously St. Louis didn't get nearly the production they expected from such a high draft pick. The worst 9th overall pick, Kevin Allen, Philadelphia, 1985. Allen played just 1 season in the NFL in which he graded out poorly, but that's just the beginning of his story. Days after being cut by Philly in 1986 for testing positive for cocaine, Allen was charged with rape and sentenced to 15 years in prison, only serving 33 months. He was banned for life from the NFL afterwards, but by the time he was reinstated in 1991, no teams had any interest in him, thankfully. The worst 10th overall pick, Josh Rosen, Arizona, 2018. Rosen was known for being cocky coming out of college, even proclaiming that the 9 players drafted ahead of him in 2018 were, quote-unquote, mistakes. mistakes? Well, the real mistake has turned out to be Rosen's NFL career. He was so bad in his 1 year starting for Arizona that they traded him away and drafted Kyler Murray in his place. He's had stops with Miami, San Francisco, Tampa Bay, and now Atlanta, but he's been awful at every turn and currently has career marks of 12 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, a 61.1 passer rating, and a 3-13 record. The worst 11th overall pick, Shawn Knight, New Orleans, 1987. An example of the old adage, looks like Tarzan but plays like Jane. Knight was a towering 6'6", 290-pound defensive end, but his NFL career spanned just 31 games with 1 start. He played for 3 teams in 3 years and recorded 0 sacks. The only official stat he recorded was 1 fumble recovery. What a fucking bum. The worst 12th overall pick, Henry Ruggs III, Las Vegas, 2020. Ruggs had a mediocre rookie season, but was making strides during his second season, but we all know why he's on here. On November 2nd, 2021, Ruggs was driving drunk at an absurd 156 miles per hour and killed a woman and her dog by crashing into them. To make matters worse, the woman and her dog survived the initial impact of the crash, but were burned alive in the resulting fire. Ruggs' NFL career ended at just 22, and he is now facing life in prison for his actions, and in my opinion, he should never see the light of day again. The worst 13th overall pick, Leon Burns, San Diego, 1971. Despite being 29 years old at the time, the Chargers drafted Burns 13th overall in 1971, and he rewarded them by lasting just 2 seasons in the NFL. He finished with just 292 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Could you imagine the outrage from PFF if a 29-year-old running back was drafted in the first round nowadays? Wow. The worst 14th overall pick, George AMUNDSON, Houston, 1973. After a brilliant collegiate career at Ohio State, the Houston Oilers drafted George AMUNDSON 14th overall to, well, do a lot more than he actually ended up doing. He played just 29 NFL games and finished with just 406 yards from scrimmage and 5 touchdowns. But hey, at least he didn't end up killing anybody off the field. The worst 15th overall pick, Huey Richardson, Pittsburgh, 1991. One of the most fascinating first-round picks ever. Richardson only played 5 games with Pittsburgh in 1991, registering 3 tackles. New incoming Pittsburgh head coach Bill Cowher tried to switch Richardson to outside linebacker in 1992, but that didn't work, so Richardson was traded to Washington. He lasted just 4 games with Washington and signed with the Jets, where he lasted just 4 games with them, and after the 1992 season was over, Richardson never played again in the NFL. The worst 16th overall pick, Dan McGuire, Seattle, 1991. Mark McGuire's little brother wasn't so little, as he stood at 6'8" and weighed 240 pounds. He wore a cool visor, but that's about where the positives end. No offense to Magic Johnson. Dan finished his NFL career with 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 2-3 record. To make matters worse for Seattle, Brett Favre went just 17 picks later. At least he can say he never made an ass of himself in front of Congress like his brother, though. Gotta look at the silver linings anywhere you can. The worst 17th overall pick, CLYDE Duncan, St. Louis, 1984. Duncan's NFL career was spectacularly bad by any standard, but especially for a first-round pick. His rookie year was disrupted by a contract dispute, and he didn't sign until September. He then separated his shoulder, landing him on IR. In 1985, Duncan caught the only 4 passes of his career for 39 yards and 1 touchdown. St. Louis released him before the 1986 season, and he never appeared in another NFL game afterwards. The worst 18th overall pick, Rocky Thompson, New York Giants, 1971. Thompson lasted just 3 years in the NFL, primarily as a kick returner, and he even returned 2 kicks for touchdowns. But it's safe to say when drafting him in the first round, the Giants had higher hopes than a few good kick returns and 302 yards from scrimmage. Thompson's career was ended prematurely in 1973 by a severe neck injury. The worst 19th overall pick, Steve Pisarkiewicz, St. Louis, 1977. After an unspectacular career at Missouri, the Cardinals drafted Master P 19th overall in 1977. He sat out his entire rookie year and finished his NFL career with just 804 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. To sum up his incompetence for you in another way, he has 4 times as many letters in his last name, 12, as he has career touchdown passes, 3. Yikes. The worst 20th overall pick, Ken Novak, Baltimore, 1976. A mammoth 6'7", 268-pound defensive tackle out of Purdue. Novak was drafted with the hope of improving Baltimore's defense to match up with their elite offense, led by 1976 NFL MVP Burt Jones. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Novak played just 23 games in the NFL and finished with 1 sack and 2 fumble recoveries. Personally, if I was in charge of the Colts at the time, I would have drafted a good player, but I guess I'm just built different. The worst 21st overall pick, Gabe Rivera, Pittsburgh, 1983. Pittsburgh drafted Rivera in the 1983 draft ahead of hometown hero Dan Marino because head coach Chuck Noll wanted to rebuild from the defensive side as they had done a decade earlier with Mean Joe Green. Rivera was slowly progressing his rookie year, recording 2 sacks in his first 6 games, but on October 20th, 1983, he was paralyzed in a car wreck and his NFL career was over. Imagine Marino with those Steelers defenses. The NFL truly dodged a bullet. No offense to Sonny from The Godfather. The worst 22nd overall pick, Johnny Manziel, Cleveland, 2014. Only the Browns could draft 3 historically bad quarterbacks with the 22nd overall pick in a span of 8 years. But while Brady Quinn and Brandon Weeden also sucked hard, Manziel sucked hard while also being a distraction and a piece of shit off the field. Manziel started just 8 games in his NFL career, finishing with 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 2-6 record. Just another example of why premarital sex can ruin careers and shouldn't happen. The worst 23rd overall pick, William Anderson, San Francisco, 1971. Anderson was drafted in the first round in 1971, but he didn't make his NFL debut until 1975 after spending 5 years in the CFL. Unfortunately for 49ers fans, he was not worth the wait. He appeared in just 15 games and recorded 0 interceptions. For those who don't know, that's not good for a defensive back. The worst 24th overall pick, Leo Hayden, Minnesota, 1971. The Vikings had incredible amounts of success in the late 60s and all throughout the 70s, but they could have been even better and maybe have won a Super Bowl had they not whiffed so badly on this particular draft pick. Hall of Famers Jack Ham and Dan Dierdorf were both taken within the next 20 picks after Hayden, who played just 7 games for Minnesota and didn't record a single statistic offensively. That's right, you and me did as much for Minnesota as Hayden did. Overall, Hayden's career was just 13 games, and he gained a whopping 28 yards from scrimmage and 1 touchdown. The worst 25th overall pick, Billy Cannon Jr., Dallas, 1984. Cannon could have become a good player, but we'll never know for sure. Just 8 games into his rookie season, he aggravated an existing congenital spinal condition while making a tackle. He was knocked unconscious, suffered damage to 2 vertebrae near his neck, and was briefly paralyzed in his arms and legs. The injury forced him to retire in order to avoid risking paralysis. A very sad story. The worst 26th overall pick, Ted Gregory, Denver, 1988. Gregory had a short but controversial career. Gregory had injured his knee in his last collegiate game, and the knee gave out during training camp his rookie year with Denver. Denver then traded him to the Saints for fellow bust Shawn Knight. He blew his knee out again with the Saints and finished his career playing just 3 games and recording 1 sack. The worst 27th overall pick, Ray Carruth, Carolina, 1997. Carruth was in the midst of the 3rd year of his unspectacular NFL career when he committed a crime so vile it makes me sick to think he's still breathing. He hired a hitman to murder the mother of his unborn child because she refused to abort it. The mother, unfortunately, was killed in the attack, but thankfully the child survived. Carruth was eventually found guilty of his crime and spent 18 years in prison before being released for some reason in October 2018. Fuck Ray Carruth. The worst 20th overall pick, Joshua Garnett, San Francisco, 2016. Garnett started 11 games as a rookie in 2016, then missed all of 2017 with a knee injury. He then appeared in just 10 more NFL games before announcing his retirement in October 2020. One of the most forgotten and least talked about first-round busts in recent memory. It's no wonder San Fran was so bad for a stretch there, picking guys like this and Solomon Thomas in the first round. The worst 29th overall pick, Isaiah Wilson, Tennessee, 2020. Along with Henry Ruggs, he's the most recent draft pick to appear in this video. Wilson appeared in just 1 game in 2020 and played a grand total of 4 snaps. He has faced a litany of legal issues, such as being arrested for DUI and leading police on a 140-mile-per-hour chase. In March 2021, he was charged with a felony. He is currently on the Giants practice squad. Perhaps he can bounce back and make something of himself, but I doubt it. The worst 30th overall pick, Andre Johnson, Washington, 1996. No, not that Andre Johnson. This Andre Johnson was drafted in the first round by Washington in 1996, never played it down for them, got traded to Detroit, and appeared in just 3 games for them before hanging up his cleats for good. Disgusting. The worst 31st overall pick, Rashaun Woods, San Francisco, 2004. One of the greatest collegiate wide receivers of all time at Oklahoma State, but his success did not translate to the NFL. He finished his career with just 7 catches for 160 yards and 1 touchdown, all coming in 2004. He spent the 2005 season on IR with torn ligaments in his thumb. He was then traded from San Fran to San Diego in April 2006, but cut by San Diego in August 2006. Then a few days later, he was claimed off of waivers by the Denver Broncos, but failed his physical and was released, and that's all she wrote. And finally, the worst 32nd overall pick, Derek Sherrod, Green Bay, 2011. Sherrod was drafted by the reigning Super Bowl champion Packers in 2011 with the hope that he would help protect superstar quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Well, Rodgers certainly went on to become a mega superstar during Sherrod's time with Green Bay, but it certainly wasn't because of Sherrod, who appeared in just 20 games and started just 1 during his 4 years in Green Bay. Maybe Rodgers would have another ring right now if Green Bay didn't badly botch this pick. Who knows? Eat Arby's.